Good evening. We are going to start here in about 1 minute. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight and taking time out of your evening and checking this out. I promise this will be very interesting for you if you like numbers, hopefully. And I'm going to give you a little background about myself. I am excited to teach this stuff all the time because, especially to photographers, I spent 21 years in the industry and had a sporting events photography business, photographing sporting events around the country. And I've gotten into this over the years, and so I'm excited to just kind of share this and pay it forward. And this is something, man, if I'd have known about it when I first got into the photo business, I'd probably be in a different ball game right now, certainly in my personal life and financial life. So let's kick this off right away. Little bit of disclaimer, we have to put this here and just says, we're not giving you tax and legal advice. We advise you to seek out your own for that. So, who are we? Unbridled Wealth. I like to say we are private family banking systems experts. We design personalized strategies for individuals, families, businesses, nonprofits, and with education and strategy planning, we help our clients implement their own private family banking systems or privatized family banking systems, we call it. Infinite banking concept is the classic term that this is identified at. And we're going to unpack this as we go forward tonight. I'm going to try to keep this right around 45 minutes for you guys and leave time for questions afterward if you have any. And hopefully meet up with you after that sometime and see what it looks like for you. So let's back up. What keeps you up at night? Think about that question. What keeps you up at night? There was a report put out a while ago by Capital One, and to no surprise, money was the top answer for people. 77% of Americans are anxious about their financial situation. 58% felt their finances control their lives rather than us controlling our finances. More than half have difficulty controlling money related worries. And again, to no surprise, retirement was the chief money related worry. So, and I can tell you personally, in all those years in the photo business, self employed, small business, I didn't have a retirement plan. I was hold on to my seat and hope I make it somehow and I'll figure it out later, right? That's what it was like for a long time. And I think that's more common than not for those in the photo industry if you're in it as a career. And it's just kind of how it goes, right? We do the starving artist thing when we're first starting out, and we build our business in whatever capacity that is over time. A lot of us may have a daytime job, and we're doing this on the side. So that's great. The daytime job will help us build up retirement, and then the photo business is just kind of gravy money, or it's a hobby, or what have you. But anyway, retirement, chief money related worry. So let me ask you, when it comes to your own money, what would you like to do with it in general? How much would you like to have? When do you want it? But the big question is why. I don't think most of us ask that question really. We say, why do we need to make money? Why do we want to have more money? Why do we want our money to grow? Why do we want to get ahead? What are we trying to accomplish? Nelson Nash says, he says, if some authoritative power distributed all the money in the world equally among all the people in the world, within 10 years' time, 97% of all the money would be back under control of 3% of the people. But why is that? Well, it's they understand money and how to get it to flow to and towards them instead of away from them. So let me ask you a couple of questions. Think about it. You don't have to answer it. Would you rather pay taxes now or later? I'm going to ask another question. Think about the answer. We'll circle back to this. If you had $30,000, would you make more money loaning it out to somebody at an amortized loan, 6% interest for 5 years, or putting it in a CD at 4% for 5 years? Think about that. I will tie this back in. And do you think taxes will go up or down in your lifetime? Okay. Well, let's talk about this. The financial problem. The financial problem in the country. Did you know 45% of the world that makes less than $250 a day, and 80% of the world less than $10 a day? 57% of Americans less than $1,000 in savings, and 39% of Americans have nothing in savings. Credit card debt's up to $1 trillion. Student loan debt over $1.7 trillion. That's more than the Social Security and DoD budget combined. Since 2000, average home price has gone up 59%. Student loan debt 115%. Family medical 141%. Household income only about 5%. So we're getting outpaced by everything. If you've never been here, go to usdebtclock.org. It's fascinating. It's depressing at the same time, but also fascinating. It shows live rolling numbers of the financial crisis. Well, at least where the finances are currently in the country. These numbers have soared since I took this screenshot even. Check it out. We have a debt problem in this country. How do we fix it? Einstein says, well, we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. So how do we change it? Well, first, there's 3 types of people. Okay, there's the debtor, those who like to go into debt, take their time, pay things off, finance something else. Take a car, for example. Say you go into debt, you finance the car, you pay it off over time, get back to zero. You do it again and again throughout your lifetime. The other guy is the saver. He says, I don't want to go into debt over it. I'm going to save up over time, and then I'll buy that car. The account will go back to zero. I'll save up for another car later. Buy it, go back to zero, and do this over and over throughout your life. What I want to teach you is how to become what I call a wealth creator. And that's where you create this financial velocity that can literally last for generations. So where do we put our money? Right? First place we put our money is the banks. Okay, let's talk about the banks for a minute. I'm going to use Bank of America. These are actual numbers. A couple years ago, they put in $909 billion in deposits from deposit holders, right? They paid $3.1 billion in interest back to its depositors, but they turned around and made almost $50 billion with that money that was deposited. How do they do that? Well, there's this thing called fractional banking or fractional reserve banking. If you've never heard of it, legal, the Fed says, as it's presented to the public, they say, hey, the banks have to keep an average of 10% on reserve. Depends on the size of the bank. So they'll say, okay, you have to keep 10% on reserve. And we kind of nod our heads and we say, okay, that's great. They have to keep some on reserve. But nobody ever asks the question, well, what are they doing with the rest of it? Well, that means they can take 90% of it and loan it out. So if I have $1,000 and I put it in the bank, they're going to keep 10% of it, $100, and they're going to loan out $900 into the system. That person who gets the $900, they're going to put it in the banking system, right? And the next bank, they're going to keep 10% on reserve and loan out $810 of it. Do this a couple times over, and there is $3,400 in the system, but the bank only has $271. That's why things like in 2008, if you were around then, during the financial crisis, everyone was running to the banks and they were trying to pull their money out. But turns out the money wasn't there. Banks were locking their doors, literally locking their doors. We don't have the money. There is no money. And this is what was happening. There's all this phantom money out there. Okay, where else does our money go? Investment products, qualified retirement accounts, right? What do qualified plans do? Well, they defer the tax and they postpone the tax calculation. right? This is what we're taught to do. Work hard, save up for retirement. But let me ask you a question. Let's say you wanted to borrow $10,000 from someone, and you would ask two questions really before you took the money. You'd say, well, how much interest do I have to pay and when do I have to pay it back? But if they said, hey, we don't know, um, we don't need the money right now, but down the road, we'll let you know. Would you cash that check? Well, most of us would say, well, no thanks. I'm not going to borrow that because I don't know what you're going to charge me. Well, that's exactly what we're doing with qualified accounts. We're putting our money in a tax deferred system that we cannot touch. Our own money that we cannot touch, and we get penalized for touching, and then we're going to get taxed at an unknown future rate. And furthermore, we're going to keep our fingers crossed and hope that the year or years we need to start accessing it is not the years that the market's crashing. Right? How many people have you watched spend their whole life building up retirement, focusing on retirement, and it gets wiped out in one fell swoop? Or at least obliterated significantly. S&P 500 performance, this was 97 in 2017. Just look how much it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. You can see that minus 38% right in the middle. That was 9/11. And up and down and up and down. What if there was something else you could do with your money? What if one vehicle could accomplish your goals? Things like income tax-free growth, access to your money now, penalty-free access to your money, uninterrupted compounding growth inside, collateral opportunity, you get to pay yourself, you get to borrow from yourself, you get unstructured loans to yourself, and so on and so forth. And that's what this private family banking system, or this infinite banking concept, can do for you. So stick with me a little bit longer. We're going to unpack this. Okay? I love this quote by Yogi Berra. You've got to be very careful if you don't know where you're going because you might not get there. So let's talk about the pieces. What is this infinite banking concept? What do we need? What is the vehicle that we're going to use? Okay, breaking it down and being very particular about it is properly structured dividend paying whole life insurance from a mutual carrier. Now, I am wordy about it because it is particular. It is not just, hey, go get a whole life insurance policy and this is what you do. This is not, as I say, your grandmother's life insurance policy. It's structured differently. So that's why I say properly structured whole life. I'm also not talking about IULs, VULs, term insurance, and different variants of life insurance. I'm strictly talking about whole life insurance today. Dividend paying from a mutual carrier. So there's two types of insurance carriers. There's stock owned, which interests are for the stockholders, and there's mutual owned, mutual carriers, where as a policyholder, you're one of the owners of the company, thus entitled to the profits, which come in the form of dividends. That's why I say dividend paying from a mutual carrier. Okay, whole life, nothing new. It has been around for a long time. Okay, it actually started as a corporation for relief of poor and distressed widows and children of Presbyterian ministers. Now, that's a mouthful. But it's been around for a long time. We are not trying to create something new here. We just aren't taught what to do with it because we have certain environments wanting us to put our money into qualified plans and other things. So we don't hear about this very often. Interestingly, banks carry billions with a B, billions of dollars in cash value whole life insurance company, cash value whole life. Fortune 500 companies, they know about it. They do it. Interesting story about Walt Disney going around how he couldn't get enough of a loan to finish building a theme park based on a mouse in California. So he actually borrowed from the cash value of one of his policies to finish funding it. Ray Kroc, McDonald's, when he bought out the McDonald brothers, story is he had two whole life policies he borrowed against to pay some key employees and start a marketing campaign on his brand new mascot. Any guesses? Yep, Mr. Ronald McDonald. So who else knows about this? Who else knew about it? Certain dignitaries. Interesting article on President Biden when he had to disclose his finances, talked about how he owns 0 investment products and 6 whole life policies. Well, then that becomes a head scratcher. You start going, hey, well, why would that be? Someone like this, you would think he owns tons of investments, things like that, but he actually owns none and 6 whole life policies. Well, let's shift gears here. One of the major components of this is something we call uninterrupted compounding. If you understand compound growth, so uninterrupted compound growth is the principle where your money and its gains are growing continuously on top of each other over time. So there's nothing to interrupt it, right? Compound growth or interrupted compound growth, it's typically interrupted, right? Each time the market declines, each time you pull money out, um, things that interrupt the growth, right? So one of the major things inside of a policy happening is your money grows uninterrupted. So there's nothing stunting the growth of it inside of a policy. And it's not an investment product. It's not based on the market. I'll explain. Einstein says compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Let me talk about this for a sec. Back to this answer. How many of you thought 6% makes more than 4%? Most of us, the first time around. However, if you do the math, 6% amortized over 5 years makes $34,799, but 4% CD compounds. And over 5 years, it will outpace a 6% loan. Why? Well, amortized loan, right? We're paying interest on less each year. Think of your mortgage. You pay interest on a lesser amount every year, but a CD will compound so that 4% goes on the new total each year and grows. So 4% compounding can outpace something that's at a higher interest rate on the surface. So I tell people, let's always do the math. I'll tie that in later. Interrupted compounding, another example. This was actual numbers. Again, you saw some of this earlier. But if you had $1 million at age 65, and you're going to start pulling $75,000 a year out, by the end of that 20 years, you left with 255, right? It got interrupted every time the market went down. It got interrupted every year, every time you pulled money out. What if that same money was in something that wasn't getting interrupted? Would you rather pay taxes now or later? Most of us initially will say later. We like tax deferred, right? Let's defer our taxes. Let's postpone it as much as we can. But we don't think about the unknown future rate of that tax. We can gamble. Maybe it'll be lower. We can take that risk. Most of us think taxes are going up in our lifetime. And I like to ask, if you think taxes are going up in your lifetime, why do you want to put your money into something that you're going to defer tax and pay later? Okay. So again, a lot of benefits to this infinite banking concept, this financial approach, which we're going to break down. I'm going to pivot here and start. I'm going to give you some actual numbers, and let's see this in practice. What does this look like? Okay, for everyone, it is a customized approach. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. There's no blanket approach to this. So I'm going to give you an example based on a 25-year-old and his financial situation. This was based on an actual client and what went on with him. We will strategize with you and find something that works for you. Okay, so his story was he was making 46 grand a year at the time. He had a townhouse, credit card debt, he had a truck payment, and some student loan debt. Well, his financial goal, in short, was, hey, I want to have $1 million time in my 50s, and I'll know I'll be okay, right? I'll feel safe and comfortable. Okay, so we reverse engineered that and built a product for him where he was going to push $20,000 a year for 20 years through a policy. He's not loss of access. Okay, I'll explain that, but he's not losing $20,000 a year that he can't touch. But he's pushing $20,000 a year for 20 years, and then $6,000 a year after that. We reduce it. Well, how is he gonna? A guy making 46 grand a year gonna push 20 grand through a policy? That's a lot of money. One of the benefits of strategizing is we can look at the whole financial picture and just brainstorm often. What kind of ideas do we have? What are some options you have? Well, he's like, oh, I could get a roommate. That'd save me $800 a month. He was actually flying everywhere for his work. So changed his mode of transportation, started driving. got to write off the mileage, but he had a truck, so he traded it in for a Jetta, which saved him a ton on gas, also in car payments. Did a cash out refi in his house actually, and paid off his student loans. That all those moves saved him 21,000 a year just by moving stuff around a little bit. Subtle adjustments, no major lifestyle changes here. But anyway, everybody's situation is different. So what's that look like in graph form for him? So here's the hard numbers, okay? So the yellow line, this is his cumulative outlay that he's paying through a policy. The purple line is the cumulative cash value that he has access to that particular year. Okay, so in a policy, you're paying into a policy, but you can borrow the cash value right back out. Okay, as it grows, you can borrow against the cash value. So year one, he paid 20,000 in, and you see that first column, and he has 14 accessible. So he may pay 20 in over the course of a year, and say some emergency comes up, or let's talk photography, right? Say that new, DS whatever comes out, or EOS whatever comes out, and you want to buy that. But instead of putting it on a credit card, you borrow from your policy, pay for it, and then set yourself up with a payment plan and repay yourself back over time, because that money's going to grow inside the policy as well. By the second year, he's paid 40 in, he has 28 available. Fast forward a few years, 4 years in, he's paid 80, he's got 66 built up. A lot of people say, hey, that's not a very good return on my money. And I said, now hold on a sec. So let's talk about this, how the money starts growing inside of a policy. See, the year before, he had 44,400 in cash value. He paid 20,000 in premiums. So you should have 64 and change. But he has 65, almost 66. So already for him, by the fourth year, it's growing more than he's paying in. So on average, the way we structure these, somewhere between years 2 to 4, the cash value begins growing more than they're paying in. And then by year 7 to 10 on average, somewhere in there, the cash value, the cumulative cash value will outpace or grow, be more than you've paid in throughout your whole life. So that's why by him, age 34, he's paid 200 in premiums throughout his whole life. He's got 221, almost 222 built up in cash value. He's been using it along the way. This isn't lost money, right? He can borrow against it, pay it back. He's building up enough. A few years in, he could buy himself a car, and he could be his own car loan instead of having to go to a bank. He just pay for a car out of his policy and set himself up with a payment plan to pay it back inside the policy. All the while, the cash value continues to grow. By age 54, he's paid 452 through the whole life of the policy. He's built up 1.1 million in cash value that he can utilize. Mind you, that 600,000 or so gain, that difference between the 452 and the 1.1 is not taxable, because he will always access it as a loan, and the IRS does not tax on loans. Take him even further into retirement. By age 70, $500,000 paid into the policy, 2.6 million built up in cash value. So that $2.1 million gain, not taxable, because he will never access it as pure income. He will always access it as a loan. Plus, that top row, we haven't even talked about the death benefit that's growing along with it, because it is a life insurance product. So imagine putting money into a vehicle that you have access to that's going to continue to grow year over year over year. As long as you're paying the premiums, it is going to grow and compound year over year, and all the quote unquote gains that you see on here will not be taxable. And then you can utilize those gains by retirement age for retirement. We just take loans at retirement and plan on never paying them back. So now throughout your life, you funded buying gear, you funded starting your small photography business or your studio, you funded buying a car, and down the road you're building up your retirement plan at the same time. You've got to pay for kids' college eventually. There's a lot of things you can do with this. I always say, imagine a life never having to pay interest to an outside bank again. Now let me talk about that for a second. I'm using the terminology borrowing from or borrowing against. I say borrow against. So let me explain how that works. Okay, so U is U. Emeritus is the carrier I dominantly use. So you call the carrier, you say how much cash value can I borrow against. They're going to look at your policy. They'll tell you, okay, well, you can borrow X amount. You say, great. So what they're going to do is loan you their money. They're going to charge you somewhere between 3.5%, 5%. I'll explain. But they're going to loan you their money. That's why your money will sit and grow uninterrupted. Now, right now, as I present this, interest rate is 4%. But your money will sit and grow uninterrupted. And some people are bothered by that. Well, I got to pay interest on the loan, and I had the money in here. Why do I even have to pay interest? Well, that's because your money is growing. It's compounding uninterrupted. And that will far outpace the 4% it costs you to take a loan on part of the whole. And it's going to grow on the whole. So let me explain that for a second. Look at these two numbers, these four numbers circled. Over a 5-year period from age 44 to 49, he's paid $26,425. You see, he paid $400 total at age 44, up to $426 by age 49. So he paid $26,000 and change. His cash value grew $210,000 over that 5-year period as well. So I kid with this guy, hey, would you pay $26,000 to make $210,000 in 5 years all day long? We would do that. So we're not worried about a 4% loan on some of it because the growth is far outpacing that anyway. Let me give you an example of a debt recapturing strategy. This was a gentleman, true story. This is a gentleman, had a bunch of credit card debt, personal line of credit, student loans, credit cards, $110,000 in debt, bad debt. He was on a 30-year plan to pay that off, right? At that rate, it was going to take him 30 years. He heard about IBC, infinite banking, and what it can do. So, he wanted to be debt-free. He wanted to have his own, private family banking system. He wanted to get into real estate investing. And so the plan, was, hey, let's kickstart a policy. We'll free up some funds. We're changing the flow of the money, right? We gotta get this debt taken care of. So we're gonna do a snowball debt payment plan, which I'll show you. This will create cash value as well. It'll decrease his debt, and he'll build up his family bank. All right. So a little bit more complex with the numbers. I'll talk through it. So he had saved $20,000 in a savings account. And he was thinking about putting it into real estate. So we talked and what would it look like instead to kickstart a policy? How much would you gain if you put it through a policy first and then we start attacking this debt? Postpone your real estate for a little bit, but you'll see the benefit. So we did just that. Started a policy, put $20,000 into the policy. You get about 15 of it right back out. So you're going to see that here in a sec. So we took that 15. Let me go over here. So we took that 15,000 out the first year and we paid off that first credit card line down to zero. He was paying $1,287 a month on that credit card. So we took that $1,287 and opened up a savings account, and you start putting that money into a savings account. That money's function was to pay future premiums, because the big question was, that's great, we can do a dump in year one on a policy, but how do we keep paying for it? And this is how. This is money he was already spending, except he was spending it on bad debt. So now we've just wiped out that particular line, bad debt, and we're putting it in a savings account, and once a year he's going to pull it out and pay his annual premiums. Okay, so we start saving that. The year goes by, he pays the premiums, he borrows all the cash value out again and pays down the line of credit and the second credit card down to zero. And now we start doing what's called snowballing. So he was paying $161 on the second line a month, $73 a month on the third, the credit card 2, plus $101 on credit card 1. So you see that. I'm going to highlight this. okay? 161, 73, and 101. That together equals 335. So we just added those three together and accelerated payments on the next line. This is called snowballing. So now he's paying 335 instead of 101 for the rest of the year. By the third year, he pays the next year's premiums, borrows all the cash value, and wipes out the next two lines of credit cards. So he does this again by the fourth year, and we're snowballing 591 payments plus the 201 to 792. By the beginning of year 5, he'll borrow the cash value again and wipe out the final line of bad debt. So he's now, by the beginning of year 5, wiped out all of his outside debt. Now, to be fair, we've rolled most of it inside of a policy. So now we have a policy loan. So we moved it from outside bad debt to inside the policy. Policy loans don't show up on credit, by the way. So creditors will never know that you have a policy loan. So now he's racked up $65,000 balance inside the policy, but he's freed up his outside debt. That's not saying now he can go rack up his outside debt again, but remember before he was paying $792 a month on that last line of credit. And now he takes that same $792 and begins paying the policy loan down. All the while, remember that very first line, that $1,287 a month? That's how he's paying premiums. So all the while, he's still paying premiums. But now, we're going to drop the PUA payment. We're going to drop a portion of his total premiums that he was paying. This is going to save him $11,500 a year, which is $959 a month. So he's going to take the $959 he's saving plus the $792 and accelerate, snowball the payments again to his policy loan and pay that down. So now he's got two things happening. One, he keeps paying premiums year over year. Because he keeps paying premiums, his cash value, this final line over here, is growing. Even if he never paid this loan down, the cash value would be growing. But because he's also paying the loan down, the cash value is growing even more by that same amount. So he's recapturing all of that money to use again and again throughout his life. Okay, a little bit complicated. Stay with me. Fast forward, by the beginning of year 9, he will have paid back that policy loan in full, assuming he never borrowed from it along the way again, which you can as many times as you want. But he's paid back that policy loan. So by the beginning of year 9, he's not only outside debt-free, he's debt-free inside the policy, and he has built up $96,000 in cash value that he can use for something. Continue to use. Continue to be his own bank. Take over the banking function in his life. 9 years from now, he may need a new car, right? Finance his own car. Borrow from himself and pay himself back. Or his kid needs a car, starts driving, do that. The water heater, goes out. Instead of putting it on a credit card, you borrow from your policy. New equipment is needed, right? And your gear, so you don't put it on the credit card, or instead of saving inside your bank account, you're saving inside the policy, right? And then your cash value is growing. So he went from 30 years to 9 years totally debt-free, building cash while paying down debts. Plus he's got that family bank started, plus the death benefit, the legacy component, and living benefits, which we're not going to get into tonight. And he could definitely kickstart his real estate investment business along the way. I'll give you one more example. Small business startup. Very similar. Okay, goal, be your own bank. Say he wants to launch a little photo studio. Find a way to fund retirement in the process. Have generational legacy. This is what an illustration looks like. This is an example of someone doing $25,000 a year. Now, let me back up. I alluded to it earlier. This is not a one-size-fits-all approach, right? Forget the number of zeros on the policy. Maybe for you it's $2,500 a year. Maybe for you it's 250,000 a year. I have clients doing everything, 200 a month, 300,000 a year, everything in between. It's really about what's you and your situation, and that's where we just sit down and we talk through it and what works for you. What's a good plan for you and your family? Okay. So very similar numbers. Okay. By the third year, it's growing more than he's paying in. By the seventh year, the cumulative has exceeded his outlay. By retirement, he's built up 1.4 million. By 75, 2.1 million. Okay. So let's put it in practice. Say he saved up $25,000 to kickstart his studio. Instead of just going straight from bank account to studio startup, what if you put it through a policy first? Well, remember, you don't have access to the same amount that you put in early on. A couple years later, it starts growing at the same amount, and then every year thereafter, it's growing more than you're paying in. Okay, so that's why you can only get 18 out year one. So small sacrifice for long-term gains, right? 25,000 in the first year, you took 18,000 out, started the business. Say that business was going to produce, net 45 extra that he could use. He takes 18 of it, pays back the policy loan, takes 25 of it, funds the next year's premium with it. And now he's got 43 in cash value built up. So say he doubles down, he takes $25,000 loan that year to, build up the business even more, marketing, and all kinds of stuff. Say he doubles his income, right? 80,000 in profit that year. He's picked up tons of clients. Takes that 80, pays back the 25 loan from the year, pays back the next year's premiums, plus extra 30 in his pocket, and he's off to the races. Rinse and repeat. He can do that over and over and over and over again throughout his whole life. By 7-8 years in, he's built up $200,000 in cash value, and over a 10-year period, $150,000 almost net growth. That's an extra $15,000 a year average of available cash value that he can access. Don't borrow from the bank, borrow from yourself. Be the bank. Okay? For this person, say we get by age 50 up here, 20 years into the policy, we're going to reduce premiums. You see it drops from 18 to 6,100. He has 675,000 in cash value. And this continues to grow year over year over year throughout his whole life. Now comes retirement. By age 70, we can do this at 60, 65, 70, 70, whenever you want. By age 70, we're going to stop paying premiums. He's paid $590,000 into the policy throughout the whole life. He's built up $1.7 million in cash value. Now he's going to supplement retirement by taking a $100,000 a year loan out to live on tax-free, because he will be taking a loan every year from the policy. He could do this. On this example, I ran it for 20 years. So for 20 years, $100,000 a year, that's $2 million over 20 years, down here at the bottom. He only paid $590 into the policy. He was using the cash value throughout his whole life for his advantage, and then funding retirement on a tax-free basis. And he'll never pay this principal back as he's using it, right? Upon death, the life insurance company, they've been loaning you their money, so they will reduce the amount that's borrowed plus any of that interest that we talked about earlier. They'll reduce that total from the death benefit and then pay the difference to the beneficiary. You see that again, any amount that's accrued in loans and interest, they'll reduce from the death benefit and pay the difference. The way this is illustrated, it shows it will still pay $1.4 million even after all of that. And that, my friends, is how you create generational wealth. Let me take this one final step further. Here's how we take it to the next generation and the generation after that. The first generation starts, right? You got to start it. You're going to use the policies on yourself. Now you insure your kids, insure them young, and let those policies build up throughout their whole life. The death of the beneficiary of your policies can fund a family trust, right? Which the family can then access like a bank. You set it up that way. And then they have a family bank to go to. Beneficiary of the kids' policies, they're using their policies throughout their life. They're going to insure their children, the grandchildren now. Beneficiaries of the kids' policies of the trust, so that trust is, doubled, tripled, quadrupled in size throughout their generation after they pass away. Grandchildren have even more in the family bank. They all have policies that perpetuates forward to the next generation and the next generation. And this is how you create generational wealth. But someone has to start it. What you leave behind is not what's engraved in stone monuments, but what is woven into the lives of others. And what are we leaving behind for the next generation? More than just money, right? We're setting up a system, a banking system, to carry them forward throughout their whole life. Imagine having the next generation a vehicle through which they can approach and say, I need to start a business. I need to take a business loan from the family bank and I'll pay it back, right? But I don't have to go through underwriting. I don't have to go through all the rigmarole that you do with traditional banks, right? The operators of the family trust, the trustees, they do that. So, like I said, it's a very customized approach. We talk understanding your financial situation. It is life insurance. You do have to go through an application process for life insurance. We strategize, come up with some policy designs, make recommendations. It's up to you to implement. I never met a person who said, gosh, I wish I would have waited 5 years to start a policy. I always meet people that say, gosh, I wish I would have started 5 years ago. So if it's something that's pressing on you, let's talk. Let's at least talk and see what your situation is. I am not around just to try to sell you something. I will tell you if it's not right for you right now. We have that happen often. And if it's not right for you, it's not right for you. Or it's not right for you right now. But there's no way to know unless we talk through it. Okay, so you can reach me anytime. Call or text me, 303-250-1755. There's my email on the screen. You've got an email from me if you signed up for the original webinar. You can also sign up for a meeting at calendly.com/Jason K. Powers. Visit my website. It's 1024wealth.com. It's a lot of resources on there. A couple of books, recommendations on there. You can read about it further. You can watch more of these webinars. But reach out to me. Let's talk. Let's answer some questions, see what your situation looks like, and see what we can do for you. So thank you guys, and we will see you soon.